back once again, back once again, back once again, back once again, back once again with a beat. Let the bass kick.
Jim Rohn has stated that discipline is the bridge between goals and accomplishment. That's why we need to understand and apply wisdom in all things, mind, body, and soul. And this short podcast helps you do just that. On this episode, the roaring lion hunts the wounded and the wanderers. We need to keep in mind that being weak draws unwanted attention. Marshall Siegel says, mountain lions detect vulnerabilities in their prey and attack the weakest. The enemy of your hope and happiness hunts with that same instinct, a cold-hearted and ruthless hunger for the weak or hurting. Are you wounded? Are you wandering? Well, watch out. When I was growing up, long before we had 3,000 plus cable channels, and in particular Animal Planet, my family and I would watch Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom each Sunday night on one of the only 3 channels in existence at that time. And I really liked that show until the lion needed to eat. Oh, this poor innocent gazelle. It wasn't long before you'd see the lion lurking in the tall grass, locking on to the weak with that cold, dead stare. I can still kind of feel watching the show. I may or may not have closed my eyes until the next commercial break. It seems that any herd we run with, being young, weak, or hurt, will be extremely attractive to those on the hunt. And sadly, there are hunters among us. As it is in the wild, we too are not always able to see what is crouched, hidden in the tall grass, waiting to pounce on our weakness, ignorance, or ailing condition. I'm speaking primarily of the one that seeks to destroy our souls, and he is ravenous. In 1 Peter 5:8, it says, be sober-minded, be watchful. Your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour. You might take the apostle's description to be a little overstated, but Peter is speaking from experience. In Luke 22, verses 31 and 32, Jesus told him specifically that he would be sifted like wheat, get this, because Satan demanded to have you. Just picture that exchange. Satan pleading to Jesus to have the chance to take Peter out. We are especially vulnerable when we are suffering or in a weakened state. This can be emotional, physical, spiritual. When we let these areas go undiagnosed or unaddressed, we become an easy target. We're essentially hanging a sign around our necks that says, pick me. OpenThouMineEyes.com says this, a lion attacks more viciously when he draws blood. Like the lion, Satan shows no mercy. When his attacks begin to destroy and ruin a life, he continues to do all that he can for further destruction. Our being wounded or wandering should be a hint that we're running the risk of attracting unwanted attention, which is why Peter urges us to think clearly and remain vigilant. When you take a good look at yourself, are you giving the roaring lion any reason to target you? Are you unknowingly or unnecessarily vulnerable? So what do we need to do? We need to get to safety, need to get better, and then rejoin the herd. Most Sundays, just before the message, the pastoral prayer at our church will include a request for God to meet the hurting among us. Our vulnerability can easily go unnoticed because we are so good at hiding it or ignoring it. So it is good that we are reminded of it by His calling our attention to it. If not, it can surely perpetuate the hurting, delay the healing, and leave us completely exposed. So I guess this would be my pastoral prayer, if you will, to call attention to our need, to ask ourselves if we are hurting or vulnerable. So first, honestly ask, am I hurting, weak, vulnerable? It first requires the humility to observe whether or not there are any indications you may be walking wounded. It may be accentuated in one area, but will have implications in others. What affects us emotionally, for instance, can also impact us spiritually, or we may experience physical symptoms. Have you separated yourself from the herd? Are you avoiding prayer, avoiding church, avoiding people? It may not be so obvious, so spend the necessary time to determine whether or not you are compromised. Find a safe place, even include someone you trust, to identify any hurt or vulnerability. Second, actively treat the issue. Identifying a vulnerability is the beginning. The next step would be to decisively and thoroughly treat the problem. This might require you seek out those that are specifically trained to help you through what you need to address, but it certainly means, as a first step, trusting God to protect and then heal. Mike Ford, from an article called Stalked by Satan, says this: he, Satan, is always looking for a way to maneuver us into a position by ourselves where he can leap out of nowhere to maul us. Once he attacks, he causes great pain, but he does not go immediately for the kill. He pins us down and wounds us first. Even while in his grasp, though, we can call out for help. And this is the point that I want to make. The Lord is near to all who call upon him. He also hears their cry and saves them. That's from Psalm 145. Actively treat the issue. Trust him to protect and then heal. And then thirdly, strength in numbers. One of several lessons we had the opportunity to learn from the pandemic is the detriment of being isolated. There is strength, among other benefits, in numbers. There will come a point when you'll once again run with the herd, so to speak. That is important because it not only means you're healthy enough to do so, it also means you'll remain so because of the benefit that the herd provides. As the body of Christ, we care for the hurting or weakened member to eventually become the person that, in turn, can provide that same support to others. So, in humility, honestly ask, am I hurting, weak, vulnerable? Second, actively treat the issue, and remember there is strength in numbers. When we're wounded or compromised, we are weak. And when we are weak, we are vulnerable. It really is a matter of when, not if, we'll find ourselves vulnerable to the merciless attack of the enemy. Get to safety, get better, rejoin the herd. Be sure to spread the wisdom around. It is wise to share. Tell a friend about the podcast. Send them over to wisdominallthings.com. And thanks so much for listening.